Good evening. I'd like to call the study session of North Augusta City Council for Monday, May the 23rd, 2022 to order. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to our city administrator, Mr. Jim Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As with our study sessions, we'll have three major areas to discuss. One will be the proposed agenda for the city council meeting next week. Second item will be the department details issued by the directors and senior managers. And then lastly, we'll go into mayor's matters. And we have two focus items this evening, one of which will be presented by our finance department, which is the audit presentation to council. And then also I'll be providing an update on the public safety headquarters on Georgia Avenue. So with that, if we could, we'll go into the first item. So we'll go through the council agenda. So I'll skip right to the proclamations. What I would like to draw your attention to, you've got a number of proclamations that the mayor will be reading, but the last one is a proclamation of emergency. This was done at my request with the mayor to give us some flexibility for our planning commission and for our Board of Zoning Appeals to be able to do virtual meetings if they so desire. So we're starting to see, at least regionally, a slight increase in COVID cases, and so I'm not sure where that's going to go, but I wanted to make sure we had the requisite tools available to us that if we had a number of boards or commissions that wanted to do a virtual meeting, or if the council's discretion at your meetings, that you had that available to you going forward. And I believe that proclamation we've added for a one-year period of time to give us some flexibility. So just wanted to make sure you understood why we're doing that. I don't think we're in a full-on emergency, but that's the wording that's required by ordinance for us to be able to conduct those meetings in a virtual way. Any questions on that? Okay. Next, we'll move into unfinished business. So under planning and development, which would be ordinance number 2022-06, which is the ordinance adopting a 5-year update to the 2017 comprehensive plan for the city of North Augusta, ordinance second reading. We've had multiple discussions on this, and we had members of the Lower Savannah Council of Governments come and brief this body, also in a public forum and a public hearing for the updates to that document. And so this will be your second vote on that item. Subject to any of your questions on that, I'll move to the next one. Next item's under zoning, ordinance number 2022-07, to amend the zoning map of the city of North Augusta, South Carolina by rezoning plus or minus 2.72 acres of land owned by Barbara Andrews Ross, portion of Aiken County tax parcel number 005-19-02-031 from CR critical areas to R7 small lot, single family residential, ordinance second reading. And again, this is for the portion of land that's immediately south of Mossy Creek Elementary School on 5 Notch Road. A number of council members had some concerns about the changing of this zoning, and we had the developer come in and give an update about the lot size and what was going to be occurring at that area, and then how that was going to be restricted pretty much to the frontage of the road, and it seemed to answer most of the council's questions at that point in time. And so this will be coming for a second reading for you all next week. Okay, on to new business. For economic development, resolution number 2022-21, establishing and agreeing to participate in the Lower Savannah Regional Home Consortium. I believe this is an annual request that we have from the Lower Savannah Council of Governments. Allows us to participate in this program for our citizens. I wouldn't say it's widely used here in the city of North Augusta, but it is a minor tool that can be used for our citizens as required. And so our recommendation from the staff is to continue our participation in that agreement with the Lower Savannah Council of Governments.
I don't have any questions, but I think as was expressed last year when this came up, several of us kind of, I don't know if disappointment is the right word, but it'd be nice to see it used more. I don't know that that's necessarily a directive for staff or anything, but advertising that or making sure the folks in North Augusta know that it's out there and that those funds are available as needed. I'd like to see more of that money coming into this part of the Lower Savannah's region.
I think it might be helpful too if anyone has used it over the last year. It'd be nice to know that data. Dr. Molnar maybe can just
I
get
can,
that to us?
I can speak to that.
Oh, great, thank you.
After they came last year, I did get in touch with them and I spoke with one of their home coordinators, and we've tried between myself and I know Tommy and maybe at least one other person in the planning department has tried to stay in touch with the folks that run the home program. There's not been a North Augusta resident in the past year who's benefited from these funds, and in my conversation with them, we're not really their target area. I don't know that there are developers that utilize home funds within the city limits of North Augusta. We, in discussion with them, at least I know I've expressed interest to them to keep us in the loop, to stay in touch with us. Because of some COVID issues, they've not been able to have an in-person meeting. We were invited to a lunch and I think a training. Tommy was scheduled, I think, to attend at one of those. I know I was too. As we move forward, though, there's an opportunity for us to continue to try to work for them, but to date, North Augusta has not been a resident of North Augusta has not been a beneficiary.
Very good, thank you for that update, Rachel.
Thanks for being on me, Rachel. Appreciate it. All right. We'll go next to Planning and Development, Resolution number 2022-22, accepting a deed of dedication for the streets, water distribution system, sanitary sewer, stormwater collection and fire suppression systems, detention ponds, and associated easements and rights-of-way, along with a maintenance guarantee and letter of credit for Hardy Point. So again, this is a routine action that we take as a city with developers where we accept this deed of dedication based on their completion of infrastructure. If you see in your staff packets, where Hardy Point is near both Wamrath Road and Sycamore Drive. So you can see that it's in that neck of the woods, not a overly large development. It's a single road cul-de-sac, but that's just something for y'all to take a look at. And again, I think this is a routine council action for y'all to approve. Going on to item number 10 under annexation, ordinance number 2022-08 to change the corporate limit to the city of North Augusta by accepting the petition requesting annexation by the landowners and annexing plus or minus 43.9 acres of property located on West Martintown Road and owned by Adams Brothers Properties LLC, ordinance first reading. So this is property that's on Martintown that's north of I-20, that's closer to the Edgefield County portion of the town. And so ultimately, this is a project that the folks there are working on and wish to be annexed into the city. I believe they had initially taken a crack at this and amended their development. So before they got all the way through the process, reset, got a new plan put together, and then put this forth and is now more mature and ready to go. So this will be an annexation request for that property and for that development.
Is that, what did you say is going there, Jim?
Believe it's
52 townhomes.
All right, because there was a couple of neighbors in that area. But, they're not annexed North Augusta, so they were not too happy with that.
At the planning commission, there's one person that came forward during the planning commission meeting when I saw it, and it was the folks that own that land across. I think originally that they bought like 100 acres, and the reason they came back, anytime you can clarify, was half of that property is wetlands. So they have dropped it down to work within that.
Yeah, if you look at the map that's in the staff packet, it's actually beyond Gregory Lake Road, and actually abuts Oak Creek on the backside there, so it would have more frontage on Martintown. It doesn't fully front Martintown based on the property that it has there, but it does show where that would grow. And again, we're doing this at the request of the developer, not as part of a North Augusta land grab, so to speak.
I know it says it in here somewhere, but I can't put my fingers on it. What's the zoning that it's coming in under? Is it R?
They're going to
Five.
R7.
R7, thank you.
No, that is.
Tommy said it was R7. Okay, then we'll move on to item number 11, under City Code, ordinance number 2022-09, amending Article 13, Signs of the North Augusta Development Code, Chapter 18 of the City of North Augusta, South Carolina Code of Ordinances, ordinance first reading. Give me 1 second here and I'll get my notice here. So this is the request that was put forth to be able to put murals in P public zoned areas as opposed to just downtown. So currently, our mural ordinance allows us to do things, and you can see our first mural there on the beveled edge there next to First Baptist. And so based on requests of citizens to the mayor and to some council members, the ability to put murals on public art in public spaces. This is a reaction to that request. And so that went forward, and the Planning Commission made some minor changes to the text and then submitted that for use here for the City Council to consider. And so that's what's before you today.
Let me just say, this is one of those items where folks came in front of us at the Public Power Hour. And it was an opportunity for them to get in front of all 7 of us, and they shared this idea. So it gave us an opportunity as council to listen, and then we were able to get back and work with staff and administration and with Tommy to get it through the process. So that's one of the benefits of the Public Power Hour, is something positive that can come out of that. So I just wanted to kind of reinstate that.
And will these murals be approved by the committee that was appointed, not us?
Right, no, not us. Still love you, Ted.
And, one thing I might mention, Tommy and I have discussed,
Piece of-
you might see this ordinance a little different. We realized after we looked at this and the other that we do not have a definition, specific definition, in the ordinance for public art or murals. It would be, and it's just, we have a section that has definitions, and we may end up including that in here to add that to the ordinance, so there wouldn't be any question about what we're talking about when we refer to that.
Good. Thank you, Kelly.
In what area are we talking?
Well, they brought it to us talking about the tunnel
Yeah.
before you get to the trestle
Right,
in
okay.
Martintown, on the outside piece that flares out. That was the initial conversation they came to the Public Power Hour. Now, whether that's where they want to continue, I don't know, but that kind of got it moving.
But let's say somebody like, and I know this, I'm just going to use Belts, a place like that, they could not. This is only public
Public.
use
yes, ma'am.
building, okay, in downtown,
No, just, public, yes. Public.
public.
Well,
We
actually,
already have the downtown piece, so this is a public piece.
is downtown still included? I don't see it. Okay. Okay.
I think the Plan Commission did bring a good point about the sculptured art, because there's been conversation talking about, the idea of on Center Street, having art going down there. A lot of communities use that to draw people up. So I think they added that, Tommy. That was one of their, the sculpture, the art piece came in with that when they approved it, right? Which I think was a good idea, so good job, Planning Commission. Okay, Jill.
All right, last but not least, item number 12, Engineering and Public Works, Resolution number 2022-23, resolution authorizing the acceptance of the low bid of CBH Excavation LLC for the Northwoods Pipe Replacement Project. So again, we had 2 bidders on this particular project. CBH was our low bid, and so this is for our ability to move forward on this project and request that we can enter into this contract with this vendor. I'll pause for any questions on the overall council agenda for next week. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and move into department details, and our first briefer will be either Cami or Linda for finance.
Bless you.
Good evening. Looking ahead to June, we have some updates for utilities. On June 3rd, we will have a Cycle 1 due date, and on June 7th and 8th, we have a disconnect for Cycle 2. The Finance Department, along with other city departments, will be closed for the Memorial Day holiday, but online payments and the city's drop box located in the municipal building parking lot will still be available. Later this evening in Mayor's Matters, Grant Davis is here with Malden and Jenkins to present some information on our annual financial report, and we will be submitting that for review to GFOA for consideration of the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Thank you, Cami.
All right, next we'll have James from Public Services.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I want to recap Project Southwest Interceptor Emergency Pipe Repair. I've talked about it several times in the past, but you should have some digital images that were attached to the listing of the presentation items tonight. One of them is going to be 18-inch corrugated metal pipe that was rehabilitated. It's at the very top on the screen behind you. And the after effect of the repairs on the lower section. That job turned out very well. Pipe is structurally sound, and we're going to get some years of service out of it to come. The next slide is clay pipe, which is one of our oldest pipes that we have in the system. The Southwest Interceptor was constructed in the early 1950s. It was part of a grant from the federal government through the USDA. When Savannah River site was being constructed, we had a lot of influx of buildings, and a lot of that started over around the Hammond Hill subdivision. We are in the process of closing out this phase here so we can move to the second phase of the project, which is going to be very much larger. The GIS department, Kevin Whaley and Ricky, they finished mapping out the area that we're going to include in the spec package that's going to be sent out for potential bidders of contractors to come to the city to hopefully work on the project. So we'll hopefully have something out for bid mid next week. It's going to be a very big package, so we want to make sure everything is fully detailed as we can. You have any questions or like any
Good,
more
James.
further
Thank
comments?
you.
Okay. Moving on, yeah, it's a great announcement here. We're very pleased that the city has been awarded a grant from the RRA, $500,000 to go towards the upgrade replacement of the Clay Street pump station. If you're familiar or not with that pump station, it was constructed in 1974, and it supports our medium water system, pressure zone. It provides water to Smithfield water tank, 5-notch water tank, and also observatory. It's more or less the heartbeat to that system. Without that pump station going, you get into a critical situation. So we're very pleased to know that we at least got some funding coming to the city for that. Staff and I will be working with administration, pulling numbers together, and we'll be coming back to y'all in the very near future to get your authorization, hopefully, so we can move forward with that project. Last on the list was a good point that Mr. Brooks brought up several meetings back related to some of the commercial enclosures, sanitation dumpster enclosures that were located throughout the city at our businesses. And staff went out and conducted an inspection, and we had 36 enclosures that are very dilapidated, that need repairs, replacement improvements to wood, iron, missing hardware, and also a lot of debris that they let litter inside them. So this week, starting tomorrow, the letters will be delivered requesting these businesses have these completed for inspection within 90 days. So we don't anticipate any problems. We'll work with the businesses, and also it should be a smooth transaction to get these unsightly areas cleaned up. Any questions?
So businesses are responsible for that.
Yes, ma'am.
And just one question, how'd the hazardous waste collection go Saturday at Kroger?
That's another area, Ms. Carpenter. Mr. Zeezer, that's
Oh,
his
Mr.
area, so
Zeezer,
he'll be
okay.
able to help you with that.
It's good information, James. Thank you for your team. Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr.
James.
Brooks, for spearheading that.
All right, and now I'm turning over to Tommy from Planning and Development.
Mr. Mayor, the no BZA meeting this month. We don't have any applications. And just an update on the Georgia Avenue traffic calming. I may have let you know last time, I'm not sure, but we did get authorization from SCDOT to negotiate a contract with one of the vendors. And I have met with the vendor and gone through what we anticipate wanting in their contract and waiting on getting some numbers back from them. So that's where that project's sitting at.
Any idea how long to get those numbers back from them?
I'm hoping this week or next. I would think that it'd be a fairly quick turnaround. We were, in our discussions, the budget that we have is public information, and he was aware of the numbers that we're looking at.
Good, thank you, Tom.
Yes, sir.
Also, to kind of dogpile on Tommy's comments here, he's got a position that's out on the street right now for an additional planner, which was approved by the council for a 1 July start in the budget. So that's out on the street now for advertisement, and we have a number of potentially qualified applicants that are looking at that position.
Tommy, I'll let you go too fast. I think Mr. Brooks want to ask you a question.
One question,
I'm sorry.
the contractors, are they already authorized by DOT? Or
No.
do they have to go through another process, another delay?
No, sir. The DOT reviewed our, DOT gave us permission to send out the proposal. Then they were given copies of what we received. They sat in on the committee where we reviewed those proposals, and then we requested to go with a particular vendor based on that meeting, and they said, go forward and negotiate the contract, and then come back to us, and we'll see if we'll let you go with the contract.
I was afraid of that.
Yes, but they are in the process with us.
Okay, we'll move over to Chief Thomas in Public Safety.
Okay, from Public Safety, this Thursday, the 26th at 4 p.m., we'll have a department meeting. Mr. Mayor, I understand you're going to be our guest, so we're looking forward to that on
Forward to
Thursday.
being there.
We had some discussions with Aiken Barnwell Mental Health, which involves involuntary commitments and transports, which will fall on the city now as opposed to the county, the sheriff's office. They've made some change in some of that legislation, which will kick it back to the local. So that's for us to transport people who are involuntarily committed to the Aiken facility. Outside of Aiken, the sheriff will still handle, but what's inside the city belongs to North Augusta. And then meetings continue with JLA and SEN and Capstone about public safety headquarters. We met with those folks. We'll continue to meet with those folks the next 2 Thursdays, so I would imagine things are going to get pretty busy for us in that regard. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, and I'm happy to welcome Rick Meyer back to the podium for PRT. Welcome back, Rick.
Back in the saddle.
Back in the saddle. Good evening. First and foremost, you can see North Augusta High School girls softball team has advanced to the state championship series this week. Game 1 was to be played tonight, has been rescheduled for tomorrow night at 6 p.m. at Riverview Park, and they have a 3-game series versus Catawba Ridge High School out of Fort Mill High School. So I stole your line there. Go Lady Jackets, right? I know you'd have that. Wednesday evening, yes. Right now it's Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday. No, Wednesday will be at Catawba Ridge, and if they go game 3, neutral site. And I do not know where that site would be at this point. Probably somewhere in Columbia. Yep. Wednesday evening is North Augusta Parks Recreation and Tourism Night at SRP Park with the Augusta Green Jackets. All of our spring sports participants and coaches will be recognized in a parade and admitted free general admission, and we'll have one of our players and coaches throw out the first pitch, and I believe we have a parent or a coach going to sing national anthem. So if anybody would like to attend that, let me know if you need a ticket. Splash Day, Riverview Park, Friday, June the 3rd, 11:30 to 2 p.m., North Augusta Public Safety. Chief Thomas's folks are providing a ladder truck to splash all the kids. The North Augusta High School football team will be working the slip and slide, and the PRT staff providing free hot dogs and Augusta Coca-Cola the drinks. And that'll kick off our weekend to my next item to Rockin' and Rafting event scheduled for Saturday, June the 4th. We meet again Wednesday this week as preparations continue for that event. And by the way, Mayor, those are some great videos on Facebook. I love them.
Wait till you see the one Pat's gonna do soon.
There you go. PRT Advisory Commission will have its first meeting of the year this Thursday, May 26th at 4 p.m. Looking forward to that, and the reason it's the first meeting, obviously, is I've been away from the office. And the 2022 Nike Peach Jam is July 17th through the 24th. Be one full week. It'll just be the men this year, but will be a 7-day event at Riverview Park. And one last thing I left off of there, in case you haven't noticed, last week the hometown hero banners were all put up on George Avenue. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Are the girls going elsewhere, or are they just not playing this year?
They're going back to Chicago.
Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And also the floors are being redone at Riverview Park.
Correct.
Too, right?
That started last weekend, continues. So it'll probably be next Tuesday when we open back up for business. Want those to be nice and pretty for our basketball, for the Peach Jam coming up. That's right, Pat. She can't practice inside, yes. Thank you.
All right. Tom's going to come up and give us an engineering and public works update.
Just a few minor things from Engineering and Public Works. Approved in the 22 budget was some funding to remediate some roof leaks that have been plaguing this building, particularly the Arts and Heritage Center, pretty much since we've been in the building. But anyway, we have a firm that was on site today that began the leak investigation. They will continue that work tomorrow, so hopefully they will, as a result of that, they will be able to identify the locations and causes of those leaks and help us to develop a repair methodology for that work. We have out for bid the RVP walking trail resurfacing. That project will bid on June 9th. And then lastly, to recap the household hazardous waste collection event that was Saturday, fairly successful. We had 144 vehicles. They collected nearly 8 tons of waste material. The majority of that was paint, but also oil, pesticides, and other unidentified liquids and materials. So anyway, so we were able to accept all vehicles. We didn't have to cut anyone off. We were able to keep that event open for the full duration of the advertised time.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, Tom. Last but not least, Ricky Jones is going to give us an IT update.
Hey, I wanted to give y'all a quick update. We completed the .gov transition, and it was outstanding, very successful. We haven't seen any mail flow issues. The old on-premise server has been shut down for 3 weeks and will be formally decommissioned this week, so it'll be gone. So that the big part is gone. So now what we're left with is to migrate the website over to .gov. So I will be in contact with Granicus, which is hosting our website this week, and kind of map out the path forward to do that. And I don't anticipate, more than a couple weeks lag time for that. So one of the questions that y'all might have, the domain is going to change to, same as your email now, northAugustaSC.gov. If somebody types in northaugusta.net, they'll be redirected to the new site. So any links that are on the site now will just be northAugustaSC.gov/whatever, like mayor, for example. So that shouldn't change anything.
Okay.
And that's all I have, unless you have questions.
Thank you, Rick.
All right, I believe that completes our second item, and now we're going to the Mayor's Matters focus items, and I'll turn it back over to Finance for our first item.
All right, well, thank you for having me here tonight to go over the city's annual comprehensive financial report. You may recall from last year that I prepared a little PowerPoint presentation, really just a synopsis of the overall document. That we provided hard copies of it that you can have to look at, and you may have seen a PDF as well, but quite a document in terms of length. So if you have any questions as I go, I'll certainly try to answer those. If you think of anything after the fact, just please let me know, or obviously let Cammie know, and we can work together to get those questions answered. So with that, I'll just jump into the presentation here. I pretty much just said what I was going to do, but the purpose here is to tell you a little bit about who we are as a firm. Certainly go over the document, the annual comprehensive financial report. I think you will note this year that the document, the financial statements themselves, have gone through a name change. In the past, this may not mean anything to y'all, but in the past it was called the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. The acronym was CAFR. That has been changed to ACFR, so they've changed the wording there. So if you see that, don't let that bother you. That's very simply just a name change, same document. Go over some financial statement highlights and again answer any questions you may have as we go through here. But this is just a little bit of information about who we are as a firm. I'm not going to read all this to you, but we audit about 600 governments across the Southeast and have offices in 5 states. The audit opinion, which I'm sure you're all maybe most interested in, is found on page number 1 in the document if you happen to go there. It is a little misleading because that's not the first page in the document. You have to get through some Roman numerals and things like that. So maybe ultimately 15 pages in or something you can find our report. The layout of that report itself has changed significantly from past years. If you were to compare our report this year to our report last year, the format or the layout has changed again significantly as a result of some new standards. The main change is our opinion is front and center, it's first paragraph, and we've issued a clean opinion or an unmodified opinion, which is really the only acceptable result in a financial statement audit. But again, really just a change in verbiage throughout the report. So if you're comparing last year's to this year's, nothing to be concerned about, just some change in format. It also goes on to say that the city is responsible for the financial statements themselves or the document, and it's our job as independent auditors to express an opinion on those financial statements, which we have done, obviously. And the auditing standards that we followed were the acronyms GAAP, which is Generally Accepted Auditing Standards, and GAS, which is Government Auditing Standards. So anyway, that's how we've conducted the audit, and you can find all that verbiage in the opinion. I think I said this last year as well, but in the whole document, I can't remember how many pages it actually is, over 100. If you were to read one section, I would say read our opinion, obviously, because that's important. But after that, to read the management's discussion and analysis section, basically 8 or 10 pages of what it sounds like, analysis by management of what has changed from 2020 to 2021, a look at capital asset activity, a look at long-term debt activity, discussion about the budget. All that obviously very relevant to decision making, and it's well written. So again, if I would suggest one part, it'd be that. If you have insomnia, feel free to jump into the footnotes. Let's see. So I'm going to jump into some numbers here, and again, this is very big picture. But for the city as a whole, you can see total assets and what we call deferred outflows of resources equate to $280 million at the end of 2021. 57 million of that is cash, which is restricted and unrestricted cash. They're two separate line items on the statement of net position. About 2.7 million, or a relatively small portion of total assets, are receivables, which are things like property taxes receivable, utility accounts receivable, all that net of an allowance. And then $216 million in capital assets. So the largest portion of your total assets wrapped up in capital assets, which are things like infrastructure, buildings, vehicles, so forth and so on. That is net of accumulated depreciation on those assets. And then you can see that last bullet there, overall total assets are up about $11.3 million from 2020 to 2021. Continuing on the statement of net position, or the balance sheet, $139 million in total liabilities and deferred inflows of resources. About $16.3 million of that is current, or due within 1 year, so due before December 31st, 2022. A further breakdown of that, you can see accounts payable, which are just trade payables to vendors, suppliers, things like that, about $2 million. The current portion on long-term debt, which would be bonded debt, any capital lease obligations, things of that nature, $5.6 million, and then unearned revenue of $6.3 million. That unearned revenue is representative of your ARPA monies. That basically those monies are recognized as revenue, not when they're received, but when you spend it. So when those monies are obligated in the future, they'll be shown as an expenditure, an expense, depending on the fund type, and then revenue at that time. So right now, you've just got a bunch of cash sitting there and a liability offsetting that. But that's a new item for this year, obviously. $117.5 million of the 139 is long-term, so due within more than 1 year. And you can see about $95 million of that is financing, so that's bonds, notes payable, capital lease obligations. And then $23 million of that is relative to the pension obligation, including the state retirement, SCRS, and police retirement. Liabilities are up about $5.1 million over 2020 numbers, and you can see a big piece of that is that ARPA unearned revenue, $5.9 million sitting there. So the majority of the increase is related to that new item there. $141 million in net position or equity, broken down in three components. The first is the net investment in capital assets, which is what it sounds like. It's your capital assets outstanding minus any debt that's outstanding that was used to finance or acquire those. At $117 million, so the largest portion. $28 million in restricted, which is for things like debt service, capital projects, so forth and so on. And then a deficit unrestricted of $3.9 million, which is a little misleading. If you were to look in your statistical section, for example, there's data for 10 years on your net position that you can look back to. And if you go back to right around 2015, you'll see that number was a positive until 2015, and then it went to a big negative. That was when the pension liability was required to be quantified and recorded. So the deficit is largely a result of that. It's not indicative of any failure in operations or anything like that. And the little parentheses there, I have a positive change of 3.6 million. That means that 3.9 has decreased by 3.6 million since 2020. So that number is, even in light of the pension standard, is getting better and better and better every year. Overall increase in net position as a whole this past year is 6.2 million, which is almost 5%. The general fund is obviously of relatively primary concern in any city government, and it reports $8.2 million in total assets, and about 7.6 of that's cash. That's a very liquid balance sheet there. $1.9 million in liabilities, which is comprised of accounts payable and other items like accrued salaries, things of that nature. $6.1 million in fund balance. That's up $2.2 million from 2020. Unassigned fund balance is right at 50% of the total, so not restricted or committed or assigned for any purpose. Just to add a little flavor about that, if you take the fund balance figure for the general fund and compare that to expenditures in the general fund for 2021, it gives you about 3.5 months of fund balance on hand. So at December 31, 2021, if you didn't take in another dollar in your general fund, you basically got 3.5 months to operate. What that's trying to show you there. Let's see. Revenues of the general fund about $19 million. That's up about $2.1 million from 2020 versus $19 million in expenditures, which is also up, but not quite as much as revenues. So up $761,000 from 2020. Other items in the general fund, you had net transfers in from other funds, just moving resources between funds of $2 million coming in the general fund. Capital lease proceeds, the issuance of debt to acquire capital assets, $602,000. Overall, again, the general fund reflects an increase in fund balance of that almost $2.3 million from 2020 to 2021. The budget is interesting to look at in a very positive way. You see budgeted revenues of the general fund, $17.9 million versus actual revenues of $19.4 million. So a positive revenue variance there of about $1.5 million. Expenditures budgeted at 19.3, actual 19.1. So over collected in the general fund, if that's even a good way to describe that, but collected more than anticipated in terms of revenue. Spent less than you anticipated, so another positive variance. And then if you look at the other items, which include those transfers between funds, sale of capital assets, those sorts of things make up that sort of other category that I'm talking about. Budgeted to bring in $1.4 million. I actually brought in $2 million, so another positive variance. So all blue there means all positive, all very good things in terms of the budget comparison for the general fund. I won't spend any time really on this, but you can see this is just a pie chart of the revenues of the general fund. Of course, the largest proportion is property tax related. Very same thing here with expenditures. It's a little hard to see with the blue and purple, but purple's public safety, blue is general government, which are things like administration, finance, so forth and so on. Nothing is atypical in terms of other cities generally about the mix or the breakup of those categories there. This is just a look at the last 5 years, the general fund's inflows, so revenues and other items coming in versus expenditures and other items going out. So blue is revenues coming in, red is expenditures going out, and you can just see how that's fluctuated over the past couple of years. But ultimately, with 2021 being sort of an outlier, being a very positive outlier, but revenues and expenditures for the most part are matching every year in the general fund. So no big deficits, no big windfalls, everything's looking pretty good. This is a change in fund balance of the general fund for the last 5 years. So you can see a pretty dramatic increase compared to the previous 4 years in this 2021 of that almost $2.3 million. The business type funds, which are your utility and a couple of others, just some highlights relative to those. $105 million in assets. 20.8 of that is cash, which is up about 1.3 million from 2020, versus liabilities of 30.8 million. The majority of that's long term. Those funds also show a portion of the city's pension liability there. Very short, relatively small portion is current, or again due within 1 year, and then net position or equity 74 million, which is up 2.1 million from 2020, and then similar layout to our previous discussion, but revenues, operating revenues, 17.5 million of those funds, which is up about 1% over 2020 figures. $15.2 million in operating expenses, which is down about 3.5%. Those operating expenses include depreciation expense, which is a non-cash item, but still reflected in that total. Gives us a change in net position of those combined funds of about $2.1 million, which is an increase over the increase from last year. So, all kind of the theme is positive here in terms of finance. Cash flows, so you think about, why did our water and sewer utility have such an operating margin? Very important in terms of cash flows for those funds. Basically, $5 million was generated from those combined funds in terms of operating activities. So revenues from customers and users minus payments to suppliers and employees. And then that $5 million was basically used, 1.2 of it was used to transfer out monies to other funds. 2.1 million of it was used to buy capital assets of about $1.1 million. Paid debt service payments of $19.7 million, which was really a refunding of some prior outstanding debt included. That's why that number is so large. You can also see proceeds were received from debt. Bonds issued about 17.7, and again, that was in a refunding transaction. And then leases issued, capital leases issued of almost $1 million. So cash coming in. The cash from investing activities is pretty sad, but that's just indicative of the market environments at this point. $35,000 generated on your cash balances in those funds, which is down almost $100,000 from last year. But again, that's just indicative of the investment mix. But overall, cash is up $1.7 million. So in light of all that activity, the cash balances still are up from last year. The up 138% from 2020, that's the increase in the increase. So not your cash is not up 138%, but it increased more than last year by 138%. This is similar to what we looked at the other funds, but just a breakdown of the four business type funds. Revenues in blue, expenses in red, and of course that excess or that operating income is used to reinvest in your infrastructure, to pay debt service, things like that. Other required communications, we're required to communicate to you all. We'll have a document that we issue. We call it our auditor's discussion and analysis that we will ultimately be issuing. It will memorialize all these communications I'm about to have, so you'll have it in front of you. But basically, we're independent of the city. We didn't have any disagreements with management in conducting the audit. We didn't have any past adjustments or any uncorrected misstatements, all things of that nature. And of course, that'll be very spelled out in this document that we'll ultimately issue in the next week or so. But nothing negative at all to report relative to the conduct of the audit for 2021. This is just some more of the same that I just mentioned here. Last thing, there's some new accounting standards, which y'all probably don't care a whole lot about, but I'll still mention to you. Next year is going to be a pretty significant standard in this leases standard in 2022, and then following that in 2023 with subscription-based IT arrangements. That's going to significantly change the way those have been accounted for, so I include them here just so you'll know to look forward to some more disclosure in your financial statements. Any questions? I know that was a lot of numbers.
Well, I just wanted to say to Grant, appreciate you coming down here and giving us another great update. Appreciated the work you've done on this, and then also I really wanted to highlight the work that our directors have done to work within the budgets that they've been given, and also by Cammie and her team to do this financial day-to-day that put us in the position that we're in. So really great work by the city's directors across the board, but with special emphasis on Cammie and her team. So I just wanted to put that out there for the council.
Grant, thank you for your time, and Cammie and your staff. It's nice to see a very positive year and very positive trends going in the right direction. So thank you for your time.
Okay. If I can, I'll go ahead and move on to the final item tonight, which is not the Malden and Jenkins update. Oh my. There we go. Thank you. So for tonight, I just wanted to give a brief update to the council members on Public Safety Headquarters. Obviously, this is a work in progress, but just wanted to give you a quick update. We have completed all of what they call schematic designs. So if you look at a doctrine or template of how we're supposed to be doing architectural work, you start with schematic design, SD. We have completed that portion. We are now in the design development phase, and we are 80% through that process. And then that will lead into the construction document phase, which is the final phase of architectural drawings. And we believe those will be initiated within the next 30 days. Concurrently, JLA is working with South Carolina Department of Transportation, and they have commissioned an updated traffic study. So we had done an initial traffic study for the Georgia Avenue site. That was just to kind of get the ball rolling, and this will be the final traffic study to take a look at what we're doing there and what the impacts will be and recommendations we may get from them. And again, my goal, as it has been stated, is to have this out to bid this year, preferably in the late summer, with the goal of having a groundbreaking ceremony here for the council by the end of the year. So I wanted to show you kind of what we've done over the course of time, and this has been slow going, but I think this has given us a better product at the end of the day. And so what you see there was one of the original site plans for the public safety headquarters with Georgia Avenue fronting the property with Observatory on the right and Butler on the left. That was what we originally pitched to the Planning Commission and a sketch plan review, and also with the City Council. We received a lot of citizen input, and quite frankly, when we had our public input session, we had much more feedback about the site plan than we had about the actual building itself. And so with citizen input, that brings us to our new and exciting site plan. Or I'll just point this in some random direction and maybe something will happen. Hey, all right. So what you see here on this site plan is a right-in, right-out on Georgia Avenue. There was some concern about just having Butler and Observatory being the entrances, and just for citizen purposes, their entrances to this site would be on Georgia Avenue and also on Observatory. The Butler Avenue entrance would strictly be for public safety, because that will be controlled access parking into the facility itself. The other thing this incorporates, if you see there at the bottom of the diagram, kind of a eye bolt, if you will, there on the edge of Georgia Avenue. That's going to be an overlook area, which would also potentially incorporate the future police memorial. And then we're also going to be adding a historical marker somewhere on the site, probably closer to the building itself, to commemorate the buildings that have been there previous. So again, this is all based on feedback we've received from citizens on the site plan. So this is the current site plan we're moving forward with. And then if you also see there's some dashed lines on that site plan, that also is areas where we could potentially expand the facility if required. So again, as we talked to the City Council, one of the main concerns we had about putting it on East Buena Vista was that there was no expansion capability, and we've retained that here with this site plan. Likewise, this is the original design that I took to the Planning Commission and had probably the highlight of my tenure in city government, is having that call to Taco Bell and a number of other things. And so we took that original design. We did not want to monkey with the floor plan because we were pretty far along in design at that point, and also that met the requirements for public safety. But we did take some citizen input, and I see one of our audience members here, Mike Hitchler, was a big part of giving us some input about Georgian columns versus the Tudor design. And I wanted to let you all see this is our updated design now at 80% with the front view there of the courts and the public safety building. And I'll go through a number of the photos here. I know you've got it in your packets, but this would be basically a view from the police memorial side. Magic, wherever that happens. Okay. This is what you would see from the parking lot side. So as the citizens approaching the courts side of the building. So again, you get the columns are incorporated there into the front of the building. This is what you would see from Butler Avenue. So this is again in the protected parking area from the public safety. The garage door bay you see there, the portico is for bringing folks in for processing. And that's also the main entrance there for the public safety officers on that side. I think this picture really does depict a better setback, if you will. When you see just the front side of the building, it looks like the same depth of the building, but this really shows that you've got kind of a tiered approach on this side where you've got a one-story and then a two-story portion of the building. This is the rear view of the building. And what you see there, that garage door looking thing on the left is the portico that will be used to do transfer of detainees in for courts purposes. So again, two different folks, I should say defendants. I'm sorry, that was my Army terminology. That was defendants going into the courts on the left-hand side. Okay. So I wanted to put this up here for consideration. We had multiple meetings with Historic North Augusta. We had Mark Timmerman, our head of building standards, go and inspect the two legacy buildings on Observatory Avenue. And we had also had a historical review done by JLA on the efficacy of these buildings. And essentially, everybody's saying the same thing at this point in time. So between JLA, city inspectors, and now Historic North Augusta, that those facilities cannot be adequately restored. They currently do not sit in compliance with city code. If these were buildings that were in, private property, we would have code enforcement down there giving them notices. And so based on the feedback we've got from Historic North Augusta and the rules that we have in place with capital project sales tax 4 funding, which only allows for the building of the public safety headquarters, we're going to have to do something about those buildings. So I would like to add under updates 2 items. The first is we're going to move forward and pursuing a demolition permit for those legacy structures, and then we'll move forward with city crews to be able to remove those structures. And for the space there, if you go back to the original site plan, I pointed in the right direction this time, all right. So if you look at the 2 legacy structures there on the right-hand side of your screen, the picture that I showed previously was the corner there at Observatory and Georgia Avenue. That would just be straight green space that will actually improve the sight line for motorists that are coming out of Observatory that are making a turn onto Georgia Avenue. So that will add a safety component there. So there's no plan to put anything at the corner once that is removed. And then for the residents that is further down Observatory, that will remain as green space, and that could have a number of different aspects there, whether it's a garden or some other kind of green spaces requested by citizens or by council. We have no plans to put anything on that particular piece of real estate, and the decision to move forward on the removal of these structures does not change the location of the public safety headquarters on this site plan. So we will leave those portions of real estate alone. That does allow for, I believe, a relevant amount of green space, so we're not moving to just turn the whole side of the site into a parking lot. I know that was a concern of the Planning Commission and some other council members, and so what you see before you is the rough draft of the site plan, which does not have parking all the way pushed out to the front of the property. And so with that, I will take questions or have any input from council this time.
Now, we still have in the, let me go back to the updated site, the like little park area, people could come, sit and read a book, or is that going to be in that?
That's over by where we kind of anticipate the police memorial being, and that has probably the best overview down to Georgia Avenue, where it's called like the kind of an eye bolt kind of parking, not parking, but a sidewalk area.
And not having that legacy building in the back just gives us more flexibility and options.
It does.
Down the road for green space. So that's good.
Now, there's some significant trees around that bigger structure that we'll be able to keep then, won't we?
That's the current plan, Councilman. You can see there in between the 2 structures, there's a major tree that we intended on saving, but the storm came through and upended it, so that's going to come out. So our plan is not to remove trees that don't need to be removed for the purpose of parking or anything else. So anything that can be salvaged and saved that's worth saving. Roy Kibler's already gone on site and tagged a number of trees, and so we'll leave those in play.
This might sound like a dumb request, but I know there's some of the brick from the original Palmetto Lodge there. Is it possible, kind of like what they did with the high school, you know, and they tore it down, you know, I've got a brick from where I went to high school there. Is it possible to give those away to anybody that might want them?
I'll have to check through our procurement policy, Councilman, to see what's allowable, and Kelly and I will give that a look and see what's in the art of the possible.
Okay.
Well, my opinion on that, which we'd like for people to have bricks, but there will not be enough bricks. And I think you'd run into trouble with that. So I would suggest taking those bricks to make our marker to show people know that that was part of the, Seven Gable, the Hampton Hotel, and use the bricks in that way versus, I just don't think there'll be enough. I mean, I'm sure, because we've all had people call us already, they want bricks. And there's just not going to be enough bricks, but use those bricks keep it on that property some way.
I think we could incorporate it into the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Have sections of brick sidewalks from the original bricks. Just an idea.
Anybody else? This looks great, Jim. Thank you for your efforts on this. And it goes to show you, we work real hard in giving citizen input. And I think looking at the beginning design to this design, you can tell that we listened. So that was very good. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that's all I have for my portion of the study session this evening. I turn it back over to you and council.
Well, I don't have anything to say. Anybody have anything finally that good for the order? Pat, anything for you?
I'm gonna beat David to it. Go Lady Jackets.
That's all right. Let's get it. Anybody else here? I think it's great. We've got a number of citizens out in the audience. Thank you all for coming, and hope you found it beneficial. So we'd love to have folks come here. So with that being said, we stand adjourned.